October 17, 2019, Culiacán is on fire. Cartel gunmen are blocking highways with burning trucks, storming a prison, and pointing 5D caliber rifles at soldiers in the open street. The Mexican government had their man, then they handed him back. What you are about to watch is firefights where the cartels didn't just win the battle, they shattered the illusion that anyone was actually in control. One government that surrendered on camera. These are the 5 most devastating Mexican cartel firefights ever caught on film, and they get worse every single time. October 17, 2019, before 43 bodies cool in a Michoacan field, there is a moment on a dusty Chiapas highway where the entire broken architecture of Mexico's drug war gets caught on dashcam in broad daylight. La Mesilla, the Mexico-Guatemala crossing. A Mexican FRIP armored quick reaction unit hammers through the border gate at full speed, chasing a CJNG-linked convoy already across into Guatemalan territory. Armored vehicles punching through an international boundary in live pursuit, bystanders filming on phones, footage uploading before the smoke clears. 4 cartel gunmen confirmed dead, 1 international border violated on camera. The Guatemalan military jeep is right there on camera, belt-fed machine gun mounted. Crew present. A narco gunman sprints directly behind it, using the chassis as hardcover while rounds crack overhead. The barrel never moves. Analysts who walked the footage confirmed it. That machine gun had a clean firing arc across the entire engagement zone. The crew does nothing. The narcos use a Guatemalan army vehicle as a shield, and the army lets them. Colonel Edgar Hernandez, commanding forces in that sector, later denied any coordination with cartel elements. The footage disagreed with him publicly, internationally, and permanently. That is the moment this incident became more than a border chase. It became evidence of something rotting far deeper than one jeet crew's nerve. But standing down is one thing. What happens next on a civilian market street with no exits is something else entirely. The market street at La Mesilla is maybe 40 feet wide. Vendor stalls compress both shoulders, nowhere to reverse. The FRIP armored units roll straight into it. Then the rounds start hitting. Cartel shooters have positioned themselves at the street's natural choke point, forcing the column to absorb fire head-on. Geolocation later confirmed via Google Street. View matches the exact building facades visible behind the muzzle flash. One vehicle takes repeated impacts to the engine bay and stalls mid-block. The crew holds. Rounds keep coming. This wasn't accidental. Someone knew that street, knew the geometry would trap armored vehicles in a standing kill zone with civilian cover on every side. 4 cartel gunmen die here, but the incident doesn't end with bodies in the street. 4 cartel gunmen dead on a Guatemalan street. That should have been the end of it. Instead, President Claudia Sheinbaum publicly condemned the troops who crossed that border, calling the incursion unauthorized, a sovereignty violation against an ally, her own soldiers. Chiapas Governor Eduardo Ramirez pushed back immediately, defending the FRIP intercept as a necessary pursuit of armed narcos who never should have reached that line. 2 senior officials, 1 incident, opposing statements inside 48 hours. The Guatemalan side never formally charged anyone. The soldiers filmed beside cartel gunmen were never publicly identified. The corruption allegation embedded in that footage, a belt-fed machine gun that never swung, remained exactly that, an allegation. That is the border in 2024. 4 dead, 0 accountability. The cartel already moving product through a different crossing. What happens when there are no federal troops at all? When the only men standing between CJNG and your town are farmers with hunting rifles? Tepalcatepec, Michoacan. By 2013, CJNG had bled the Tierra Caliente Valley dry, extortion, kidnapping, murder quotas on local ranchers. Federal forces weren't holding the line. They weren't even reliably showing up. So the farmers organized. Local Dr. Jose Manuel Mirel stood in a plaza and told his neighbors the government wasn't coming. They built auto-defensive checkpoints from salvaged lumber and pickup trucks, armed with hunting rifles and weapons stripped from cartel sicarios they killed first. For a time, it worked. They pushed CJNG back kilometer by kilometer through sheer willingness to die for their land. CJNG noticed? They responded the way they always do: armored narco tanks, disciplined convoy tactics, and overwhelming firepower on a rural highway. CJNG gunmen are already moving. Multiple trucks swing wide across the highway simultaneously, not randomly, in a coordinated bracket. The auto defensive column has no room left. The kill zone geometry is plain in the frame. Crossfire angles cut off the road at both ends before a single defender can react. The shooting starts without warning. Sustained rifle fire hammers the auto defensive pickups from both flanks. Their light weapons are no answer for what hits them. Commander Morel's people trained for ambushes. They never trained against this disciplined, cartel choreographed envelopment executed by men who had done it before. What the cameras recorded next, in truck beds and roadside ditches, forced the casualty numbers into the public record. Truck beds hold the proof. Auto defensive fighters slumped against wheel wells, weapons still gripped, wounds already dark in the midday heat. Roadside ditches along the Tepalcatepec highway. Michoacan State Attorney records, cross-referenced against dispatches from local journalists who reached the scene before federal authorities locked down the road, confirmed more than 10 defenders dead in a single engagement on a single stretch of rural highway. Some bodies were not recovered for hours. The footage made suppression impossible. It circulated. The count entered the public record whether officials acknowledged it or not. They chose not to. 72 hours. That is how long the Mexican federal government stayed silent while CJNG's own footage of the Tepalcatepec ambush spread across international news feeds, human rights monitors, and cartel telegram channels simultaneously. Secretaría de Gobernación issued no statement. The silence was not administrative delay. Journalists who contacted federal spokespeople were told the incident was under review. While officials reviewed, the footage answered every question they refused to. A cartel had ambushed Mexican citizens defending their own valley, filmed it themselves, and released it to the world. The non-response confirmed what the auto defenses had known since the day they picked up their first rifles. The state does not hold this ground. That is the Tepalcatepec ambush. Now, a full cartel army rolls openly into a municipal seat in broad daylight. November 30th, 2019, Villa Union, Coahuila. 25 armored pickups roll in single file down the main avenue in broad daylight. The men inside are wearing military-style uniforms, tactical vests, and CJNG insignia. Then the first burst hits the municipal palace facade. Glass shatters. A woman screams off camera. The bystander filming drops to the floor but keeps recording, and what that footage captures next changes everything. The column hadn't come to pass through Villa Union. It came to take it. The gunmen don't stop at the facade. They push through the doors. Inside the Villa Union Municipal Palace, officers scramble for cover behind desks, walls, anything solid. Radio traffic starts immediately. We need backup. We need it now. Nobody answers. For 40 minutes, that channel carries one-sided pleas into silence. Leaked recordings, later authenticated by Coahuila State journalists, document officers calling out positions, casualties, the number of gunmen, and receiving nothing back but static. CJNG Commander Josue El Brody Garcia directs the assault from the street while his men systematically tear through the building. 23 people will die before this day ends, but the municipal palace is just where the killing starts. The heavier toll comes when state police finally intercept the convoy trying to leave. The convoy breaks for the highway. 20+ trucks, still loaded with gunmen, push southeast out of Villa Union, trying to punch through before a cordon closes. State and federal police intercept them on the Carretera 57 corridor. The lead narco truck brakes hard. Vehicles behind compress. Police units converge from both flanks. Gunmen spill from truck beds. Officers advancing up the shoulder take fire from multiple angles at once. This is where the bulk of the 23 confirmed dead are produced. The highway is still smoking when CJNG's own cameras start telling a different story. Within hours of the Villa Union firefight, edited footage surfaces online. The cartel's version shows their convoy in tight formation, gunmen in matching tactical gear, coordinated comms, framed not as a criminal raid, but as a military operation against a hostile government. The messaging is deliberate. We are an army, not thugs. Cross that against Coahuila's official state report. 14 cartel gunmen confirmed dead. 9 more, police officers and bystanders, also dead. The municipal palace shot apart. CJNG understood what that footage was doing simultaneously: recruitment reel, warning to rivals, humiliation of the Mexican state. President López Obrador's administration responded with condolences. CJNG rolled 25 trucks into a government seat in broad daylight and paid a manageable price. The pattern was about to get worse, because Culiacán didn't end the story, it started one. October 17, 2019, Culiacán, Sinaloa, 2003 in the afternoon. 35 National Guard soldiers move quietly on a safe house in a residential neighborhood. No helicopter support, just boots, a warrant, and a name: Ovidio Guzman López, El Chapo's son, named in a 2018 U.S. extradition request. The operation runs clean. They breach the perimeter. They corner Ovidio inside. He is physically in their hands. For approximately 90 seconds, the Mexican government holds the most valuable cartel prisoner in a decade. That is the last moment anything goes according to plan. Because while those soldiers are inside that house, someone makes a phone call. Within minutes, Culiacán begins to change. What happened next didn't look like a cartel response. It looked like a military invasion, and it was all caught on camera. Armored narco trucks, welded steel plating, gun ports cut into the sides, ram National Guard positions at intersections. Burning vehicles block every major exit route. Cartel gunmen in tactical gear and radial earpieces move building to building with military precision. Sinaloa deployed hundreds of fighters. Rooftop snipers with .50 caliber rifles cover the avenues. Below them, convoys with grenade launchers hold entire neighborhoods. A nearby prison is breached, inmates walking out while guards are pinned down under fire. A group of National Guard soldiers are forced to their knees on an open Culiacán street. Cartel gunmen in tactical uniforms stand over them. The soldiers' weapons are pulled from their hands one by one. Colonel Ricardo Vasquez's units had trained for firefights. Nobody trained for this. This is the first documented instance in modern Mexican history of active duty soldiers publicly disarmed and detained by a criminal organization on home soil. Sinaloa didn't just win a gunfight, they humiliated the Mexican state in front of its own people. And the worst decision is still coming. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, sitting on intelligence reports showing Culiacán in full collapse, makes a decision no Mexican president has ever made on camera. He authorizes Ovidio Guzman's release. 13 people are dead, cartel gunmen still control the streets, and Ovidio walks. López Obrador calls it saving lives. His critics call it something else entirely. The extradition warrant for Ovidio Guzman carried DEA and U.S. Department of Justice signatures. American prosecutors had built the case. American law enforcement had handed Mexico the target on a legal instrument, and Mexico had walked him out the door. Within 2 weeks, U.S. senators were in hearing rooms demanding explanations from State Department officials. Diplomatic back-channel exchanges between Mexico City and Washington grew sharp fast. López Obrador's government called it sovereignty. That is the moment Culiacán stopped being a Mexican security failure and became an international incident. But if you think that's the worst single-day body count in this war, you haven't seen Tanhuato yet. Tanhuato doesn't start on May 22nd. It starts weeks earlier when CJNG sends a message loud enough for the entire Mexican military to hear. In the weeks before the ranch assault, a single CJNG strike team hits a state police convoy and kills 15 officers outright. Days later, a Mexican army helicopter is airborne over Jalisco when a rocket launcher fires from the ground. The aircraft comes apart in the air. It goes down. That is the first confirmed, documented helicopter kill in the entire history of Mexico's drug war. Federal police commanders knew exactly what they are walking into when they move on that ranch outside Tanhuato. They go anyway. Federal police converge on a ranch outside Tanhuato in the early morning hours of May 22, 2015. They know what CJNG built here: fortified positions, armed sentries, men sleeping in shifts across the compound. The assault begins and the ranch erupts. Gunfire from multiple directions simultaneously. CJNG fighters spill into the open fields. Some run toward farm equipment for cover. Some never make it out of the sleeping quarters. Bodies in the dirt between furrows, bodies slumped against rusted machinery, and on the blood-soaked patio, mattresses and sleeping bags still warm. Clothes scattered where men dressed for a firefight they didn't survive. Every zone of that compound tells the same story. That is the ranch assault. When the dust settled over Tanhuato's fields, investigators began the count. 42 suspected CJNG fighters dead. 1 federal police officer, 43 total. Every zone documented it. The open field, the machinery yard, the sleeping quarters where men never reached their weapons. AP wire photographs confirmed what official reports would later quantify, the highest confirmed single engagement body count in the entire history of Mexico's narco war. Commissioner Enrique Galindo's federal police had walked into CJNG's fortress and walked back out with 42 bodies in the dirt. That is the count that made governments nervous. The bodies in those fields told one story. Human rights investigators began telling another. The Comisión Nacional de los Derechos Humanos, Mexico's federal human rights body, the CNDH, opened a formal inquiry into what actually happened inside that ranch compound. Witness accounts and forensic positioning suggested several suspects had already surrendered before the fatal shots landed. Wounds inconsistent with an active firefight. Bodies found in locations that didn't match a running gunfight. The CNDH's conclusion was damaging. Some of those 42 men may have been executed after the shooting stopped. The government's own institution was now investigating the government's own elite police force. That is the fracture Tanhuato carved into Mexico's institutions, arriving the same week the Peña Nieto administration was celebrating something impossible. The same week 42 bodies were laid out across that Michoacán ranch. The Peña Nieto administration released its official crime statistics. Historic lows, violence trending down, Mexico turning a corner. The New York Times and the Associated Press quoted the numbers verbatim, then quoted Tanhuato verbatim in the same dispatch. That is the legacy Tanhuato leaves, not just the highest confirmed single engagement casualty count in narco war history, but the moment Mexico's official narrative and Mexico's actual war became impossible to reconcile in the same news cycle. If you watched the government hand a cartel boss back to his own men, then saw 43 bodies in a Michoacán field the same week officials claimed crime was falling, you already know the answer. Drop it in the comments. Does Mexico's government control the cartels, or is it the other way around? Like and subscribe.